يتفقهوا في دينه. كل واحد من الرجال والنساء عليه يتفقه في دينه، عليه يتعلم ما لا يسعه جهله، هذا واجب، لأنك مخلوق لعبادة الله، ولا طريق إلى معرفة هذه العبادة ولا سبيل إليها إلا بالله ثم بالتعلم والتفقه في الدين. الواجب على المكلفين جميعا أن يتفقهوا في الدين وأن يتعلموا ما لا يسعهم جهله، كيف يصلون، كيف يصومون، كيف يزكون، كيف يحجون، كيف يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر، كيف يعلمون أولادهم، كيف يتعاونون مع أهليهم، كيف يدعون ما حرم الله عليهم، يتعلمون. يقول النبي الكريم عليه الصلاة والسلام: من يريد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين.
ودم على تواضع لا تفتخر بالنسب، كفاك أن تخرج من دنيا الورى بالحسب.
يا طالبا للعلم يرجو نفعه، اسمع نصيحة ناصح معواني، أخلص لربك في أمورك كلها، فالمخلصون هم أولو العرفان. فالجهد في جمع العلوم يضيع إن حل الرياء دواخل الإنسان، واحفظ زمانك رأس مالك إنه هبة العظيم الواحد المنان. ساعات يومك منحة ذهبية والناس بين الربح والخسران، وعليك بالخلق الكريم مع التقى، وعليك بالأدب الرفيع الشان، واحفظ كتاب الله واستمسك به، فالعلم كل العلم في القرآن، واطلب صغار العلم قبل كباره، واحفظ متون العلم بالإتقان. وإذا طلبت العلم فاعرف قدره، وأت البيوت أخي من البيبان، جالس شيوخ العلم وانهل منهم، واظفر أخي بالعالم الرباني، واحفظ وداد الشيخ صاح، فإنه بعد الأبوة في المقام الثاني، من لم يوقر شيخه أستاذه آلت عواقبه إلى الخذلان. واعمل بعلمك في شؤونك كلها، واشغل زمانك في رضا الرحمن، وأمر بمعروف وحارب منكرا، كن ناصحا للناس كل زمان. وإذا بلغت من العلوم نصابها أد الزكاة أخي بلا كتمان، علم مريدا للعلوم وقل له يا مرحبا بوصية العدناني، صلى عليه الله ما فاح الشذا دوما بريح المسك والريحان، صلى عليه الله ما فاح الشذا دوما بريح المسك والريحان.
أيا طالب العلم قم لا تنم فإن الزمان انقضى، أيا طالب العلم قم لا تنم فإن الزمان انقضى وانصرم، فكن ما حييت ضنينا به فظنك بالوقت عين الكرم، وكن حلس درسك وافرح به تكن قائدا في غد للأمم وبادر شبابك من قبل أن يقطع عزمك سيف الهرم ودع ما استطعت فضول اختلاط وأكل ونوم وقول يذم وصاحب نبيلا ولا تكثرن فكم مكثر يا أخي حرم وحقق إذا رمت شيئا ولا تسمن بوهمك ذات الورم رأيت العلوم وأصحابها.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون. الحمد لله الذي جعل للعلم أصولا وسهل بها إليه وصولا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله بشر وأنذر لا خير إلا دل الأمة عليه ولا شر إلا حذرها منه فصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. نسأل الله جل وعلا أن يبصرنا بالحق وأن يمن علينا بالالتزام به والثبات عليه حتى يتوفانا وهو راض عنا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم آمين. All praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we worship Him, we seek His assistance, we seek His tawfiq. We pray to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us that which is beneficial to us, and we pray to Him to give us the tawfiq to apply it. فَإِنَّهُ مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. اللهم فقهنا في الدين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Tonight is the 16th of Jumad al-Ula of the year 1444 since Hijrat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which translates into the 10th of December of the Gregorian calendar 2022. I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make this night a blessed night and to make all the brothers and sisters who are physically with us in this masjid or who might be tuning in live, I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make them mubarakeen, blessed in themselves and in their families. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep giving us the tawfiq to sit around these circles of knowledge, which are circles of dhikr of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. These are blessed majalis, blessed sittings that are witnessed by the angels, showered by the mercy of Allah. And I pray to Allah Azza wa Jal to make our ja'iza, our reward when we are done here, is that it will be said to us, go, for you have been forgiven. This is the 11th majlis of the series of discussion of the events from the Islamic history after the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And last Saturday we had reached the discussion of the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen Uthman ibn Affan, if you remember. And we talked about some of the virtues, manaqib, Uthman ibn Affan, and we talked about his lineage, we talked about his family, his wives, his children, sons and daughters. And we talked about, in general, that his Khilafah, which lasted for how many years? 12 years. So the 12 years of Khilafat Uthman, we said that it is considered the golden era of Al-Khilafah Rashidah. There was a lot of conquest, a lot of futuhat, a lot of conquest of lands that entered under the Islamic rule. And there was a lot of prosperity and safety and security. And that is why we said it was really considered the golden age of the Khilafah Rashidah. Tonight, inshallah, we're going to be talking about some of the important events that took place during the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu. Major events, obviously. This is not by any means a comprehensive list, but rather the major events that took place during the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu wa ardah. Like we said, obviously, I just reminded you, and we said before that there was a lot of battles that took place during the Khilafah of Uthman, and a lot of conquest. And Islam has spread, and the borders, or the borders of the Islamic State have expanded so much. A lot of lands were opened and embraced Islam. A lot of people embraced Islam, and a lot of expansion that took place during this 12-year period of time. And in it, one of the major things is that al-Muslimin, they invaded through the sea for the very first time. And that happened under the Imara of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan when he conquered Cyprus. That obviously happened through the sea, right? You cannot reach Cyprus except through the sea, right? They didn't have planes at the time, so it had to go through the sea. And Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiyallahu anhuma, he was the deputy of Uthman ibn Affan on Bilad al-Sham. He was the deputy of Uthman ibn Affan, who is al-Khalifa. He was the deputy on Bilad al-Sham. He was appointed to rule Bilad al-Sham on behalf of Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu. And Umar, he did not agree to go through the sea. He was afraid and he was scared for the safety, and he was concerned for the safety of the Muslim. Muawiyah tried to convince Umar ibn al-Khattab during his Khilafah to allow him, to permit him and give him the permission to invade through the sea. But Umar ibn al-Khattab rejected. He didn't agree to that, although he kept asking him for that, until the Khilafah went to Uthman ibn Affan, and he allowed him, he gave permission to go through the sea. And during the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan, like I said, a lot of lands were opened. The major ones of them, Azerbaijan was opened, Armenia was opened, and Kabul in Afghanistan, and Sijistan, which is a historic area. Most of it is in Afghanistan today, but some of it also is in Pakistan and Iran today. But the vast majority of Sijistan was in the boundary of Afghanistan. But obviously there are, and you know better than I do, you guys come from that part of the world, there is I believe there is a common border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, right? There is a pretty considerable, common border. And Iran as well. They are adjacent countries. Now, so Sijistan was, most of it was in Afghanistan, but some of it also in Iran and Pakistan. So all of these lands and all of these areas were conquered during the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan, in addition to, and obviously many other areas. And in addition to all of these battles, the most important battle and the most consequential battle is the battle called Dhat al-Sawari, and we're going to talk about it, against the Byzantine Empire. Dhat al-Sawari is a very important battle that we're going to be talking about, inshallah. The largest expansion of the Islamic land during Al-Khilafah Rashidah took place during the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan. So if we consider Al-Khilafah Rashidah, and by Al-Khilafah Rashidah I mean the four Khilafah: Khilafat Abu Bakr, Khilafat Umar, Khilafat Uthman, and Khilafat Ali ibn Abi Talib. These four combined, that's 30 years, a total of 30 years. This is called Al-Khilafah Rashidah. So out of the four, the most expansion of Islam, yani in terms of land, took place during which Khilafah? Amir al-Mu'mineen Uthman ibn Affan. Most of the expansion took place during that period of time. And in addition, also, Uthman ibn Affan, he expanded al-Masjid al-Nabawi. And this is considered the first expansion after the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Although, and some people may not know this, a minor expansion happened during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This took place after the Battle of Khaybar in the 7th Hijri year. In the 7th Hijri year, after the Battle of Khaybar, remember we talked about it in the Seerah, the Battle of Khaybar. There was a minor expansion during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the first expansion after that took place during the first major expansion, I should say, because there was also an expansion during the time of Abu Bakr, and there was an expansion during the time of Umar. But the first major expansion, and we're going to talk about some of the aspects of that, the major expansion during what happened during the time of Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu an, as well as he expanded al-Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. So both al-Masjid al-Haram and al-Masjid al-Nabawi alayhi salatu wassalam, both of them were expanded during the time of during the time of Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu an. And the reason for that, as you probably already guessed, why do you think they were expanded? Because the number of Muslims increased dramatically. All because of these futuhat, because of these conquests, and people were entering into Islam and embracing Islam in large numbers, sometimes in population, yani in entire country, or most of it, or the vast majority of it, embracing Islam. طيب, all of these, they have a need to visit al-Masjid al-Haram for Hajj and Umrah, and they visited, they had to visit, or a lot of them would love or like to visit al-Masjid al-Nabawi. So obviously the numbers, the crowds were getting large, and the masjid was overcrowded, and it wasn't, there was not enough space for them. So the expansions were needed. The expansions were needed due to the larger or increasing numbers of attendees and musallis or musallin attending both al-Masjid al-Haram and al-Masjid al-Nabawi. طيب, the first event that we're going to talk about is the conquest of Africa, غزو إفريقية. And by that, really, we mean the north of Africa. North Africa. Starting from Egypt. Because Egypt, you remember, it was opened and conquered during the time of Umar, radiallahu anh. And he appointed Amr ibn al-As as a deputy upon Egypt. But starting from Egypt and going west, right? Starting from Egypt and going west, North Africa, the vast majority of it was conquered during the time of Uthman ibn Affan. And this took place in the year 27 Hijri. This took place in the year 27 Hijri. And Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu an, he dismissed Amr ibn al-As as the governor of Masr, of Egypt, as the governor of Egypt. And he appointed in his place Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh. Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh radiyallahu anhu wa ardah. And then he ordered him to go westward. He ordered him to go westward to open the countries and the lands of North Africa. And that is why Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh is known as Fatih Ifriqiyya. يعني the conqueror. Fatih, you know Muhammad al-Fatih, right? Al-Fatih is the one who فتح البلاد, يعني the one who conquered. So Fatih Ifriqiyya, يعني the conqueror of Africa. And again, by Africa we mean North Africa, right? يعني, in other words, in today's world, we're talking about Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria and Morocco. Now, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and notice what I say, Allah Azza wa Jal opened these lands and gave conquest to Muslimin through the hands of Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh. And all of that took place during the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan. He ordered him to go and open North Africa, and he promised him to give him the fifth of the fifth, khums al-khums, of all the booties that they will get from this conquest. And if you remember, I tend to remember we once talked about this, khums al-khums. Didn't we talk about this? I think we did talk about it. But in any case, Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in the ayah of Surah Al-Anfal, He said, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ إِن كُنتُمْ آمَنْتُم بِاللَّهِ وَمَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَى عَبْدِنَا يَوْمَ الْفُرْقَانِ يَوْمَ الْتَقَى الْجَمْعَانِ. Allah Azza wa Jal in this ayah, He divided Al-Anfal. And what is Al-Anfal? Al-Anfal are the booties of the war that the Muslim gain after fighting. So if they had to fight to open the land, whatever booties they get, they earn, is called Al-Anfal. And if they didn't have to fight, if they just, the enemy surrendered, and they opened the land without fighting, it is called what? Al-Fay. ما أفاء الله على رسوله من أهل القرى. So Al-Fay is what is opened, what is gained, the booties and the money and the slaves, etc., etc., whatever they earn from the enemy when they open without fighting. When they opened without fighting. Like what happened, if you remember, what happened in the battle of Bani Nadir. You remember that? I don't know if you remember this. And this story is narrated or is told. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned a lot of the events of this story in Surah Al-Hashr, which is also called, by the way, there is another name for this surah. It is also known as Surah Bani Nadir. Surah Bani Nadir. Because Allah Azza wa Jal, if you remember, very quickly inshallah, we don't want to take too much time, but just to refresh your memory, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam migrated to Medina, there were three major Jewish tribes that were living in Medina: Bani Qaynuqa, and Bani Nadir, and Bani Qurayza. These were three Jewish tribes that used to live in Medina when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam migrated. He signed peace treaties with all of them. So they would be peaceful neighbors, and they would continue to live in Medina. But Jewish, like they typically do, they broke those treaties one at a time. Started by Bani Qaynuqa. They were the first one to betray, and they were expelled from Medina, and they relocated to Bilad al-Sham. And then Bani al-Nadir, they were second to betray and to break their covenant and their treaty. What happened is one Sahabi, he by mistake killed several of the mushrikeen. So Rasulullah ﷺ wanted to give the blood money because it was by mistake, right? It was by mistake, and Rasulullah ﷺ had an agreement with that tribe that they belonged to. So there was a treaty between them, peace treaty. So it is not allowed to kill them. But the Sahabi didn't know about it, so he killed them by mistake. So Rasulullah ﷺ wanted to give their awliya the blood money, but he didn't have enough money. So he went to Bani al-Nadir. And he asked them for help, financial help to pay for that blood money. So they said, Na'am, Abul Qasim. Abul Qasim is the kunya of Rasulullah ﷺ. They said, absolutely, we'll help you. So they said, stay here by this wall. And obviously the Jews always lived behind fortresses. Always. They built fortress and they fortify them because they're always scared. So they said, stay here and we will bring the money to you. And then they went inside, and immediately they said, Shaitan whispered to them, and they said, who would go over the wall and would throw a rock and kill Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They wanted to kill him, assassinate Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one of the rather wise of them, he said, he will be told, and you're breaking the treaty. How dare you do that? Right? How dare you do that? But they went ahead with that, and Jibreel alayhi salam came down and he told him about what they were planning and they were plotting. So he immediately stood up and went back to Medina because they were on the outskirts of Al-Madinah. So he went to Al-Madinah and he rallied the Sahaba to go after them. And so they went and surrounded them and they put a siege around their fortress. And they figured that their fortresses would protect them from the Muslim. And the hypocrites, and their chief is Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul alayhi la'natullah, they told the Jews of Bani Nadir, they said, don't worry, we will be your friends. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal said, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا المنافقين, those hypocrites, يَقُولُونَ لِإِخْوَانِهِمْ, they say to their brothers, because they are brothers in kufr وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, in disbelief. يَقُولُونَ لِإِخْوَانِهِمْ وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ, these are the Jews of Bani Nadir. لَإِنْ أُخْرِجْتُمْ لَنَخْرُجَنَّ مَعَكُمْ وَلَا نُطِيعُ فِيكُمْ أَحَدًا أَبَدًا وَإِنْ قُتِلْتُمْ لَنَنْصُرَنَّكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَشْهَدُ إِنَّهُمْ لَكَاذِبُونَ. They told them, if you were expelled, we will go out with you. And if you are fought, if they fight you, then we will fight along you. And Allah Azza wa Jal holds a testimony that they are liars. لَإِنْ أُخْرِجُوا لَا يَخْرُجُونَ مَعَهُمْ وَلَإِنْ قُوتِلُوا لَا يَنْصُرُونَهُمْ وَلَإِنْ نَصَرُوهُمْ لَيُوَلُّنَّ الْأَدْبَارَ ثُمَّ لَا يُنْصَرُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal is saying that they are liars. If they are expelled, they will not go out with them, and if they are fought, they will not find along them, and they will not help them. And if they do, then they will flee right away. They won't give nusra to them. So they are liars. Allah Azza wa Jal, the point, I'm sorry, it's thinking a little bit. So the point that I was trying to get to, in this battle, Allah Azza wa Jal gave permission to Sahaba and to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to cut the palm trees around the fortresses that belonged to Bani Nadir. And so they were eventually, because Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, they broke their promise to help them. And Allah Azza wa Jal came to them from where they least expected. And all of these are soldiers of Allah Azza wa Jal. He basically cast terror inside their hearts. What is the ayah? ألم تر إلى الذين فقذف في قلوبهم الرعب يخربون بيوتهم بأيديهم وأيدي المؤمنين. Allah Azza wa Jal came to them from where they least expected, so He cast the terror inside their hearts, and so they started to basically harm themselves with their own hands. So Allah Azza wa Jal, and then they basically surrendered. So there was not much fighting in that case, right? There was not much fighting in that case. So Allah Azza wa Jal said that this is a battle, this is basically an encounter with the Jews, and Allah Azza wa Jal gave you their money and their property and their land without much fighting, right? And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal said, وما أفاء الله على رسوله منهم فما أوجفتم عليه من خيل ولا ركاب. يعني what Allah Azza wa Jal gave from the booties, from the lands to his Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, you don't have to ride on horses and on camels and fight to do that. فما أوجفتم عليه من ركاب. ركاب are the horses. ولا من ركاب ولا من خيل ولا ركاب. الخيل is the horses and the rikab are the camels. So you didn't have to do that. ولكن الله يسلط رسوله على من يشاء. But Allah Azza wa Jal يعني cast his soldiers upon whomever he wish. And terror is from the soldiers of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So the terror infiltrated their hearts and they surrendered on their own. So Allah Azza wa Jal or Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam allowed them to only leave, and he expelled them, and he said you have only few days to leave, and you can only take what you can carry on your mounts, except the weapons. So whatever you can carry with you, you can take, and that's it. Everything, you leave it behind. And this is what he got. So the point is that because they didn't have to fight, it is called al-fay'. وَمَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ. Right? And in another ayah, مَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْقُرَى. يعني from the Jews. Right? فَلِلَّهِ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى, etc. the ayah. So the difference between al-fay' and between al-anfal, al-anfal are the booties that the Muslim would get after fighting. And al-fay' is what they get without fighting, without having to fight. Clear? طيب. So in this case, obviously there was a lot of fighting, and Uthman, he promised Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh. He said, if you open North Africa, I will give you 1/5 of the fifth. Because Allah Azza wa Jal, the rule that Allah Azza wa Jal set in the ayah of Surah Al-Anfal, when al-mujahideen, they go out and fight for the sake of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, then the fighters get 4/5 of the booties. So the booties are first divided into 5/5. 4 out of that, yani 4/5, this goes to the fighters themselves. And the last 5th is further divided into further 5 parts. So the 5th is divided into 5 parts. One of those, 5th of the 5th, is to Allah Azza wa Jal and to the Prophet. فَلِلَّهِ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ. So the 5th of the 5th belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal and to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and this is to be spent in the general benefit of the Muslimin. There's no specific way of doing that. Whatever, yani in the ways of benefiting the Muslim. And the remaining of the 5th, right, yani the other parts are to be spent. One other 5th is meant for the relatives of to the near relatives, and this is meant by Al-Bayt. Oh, I remember when I talked about this, when we were talking about Al-Bayt and the relationship between Al-Ashab radiyallahu anhum and Al-Bayt radiyallahu anhum. Now, I just remembered. So the second 5th is for Al-Bayt, يعني Al-Bayt al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the relative, يعني from Bani Hashim, and some of the scholars they add to them Bani al-Muttalib, because they consider them as from Al-Bayt as well. طيب, so this goes to Al-Bayt, the near relatives, ذوي القربى, يعني قرابة النبي, قرابة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, the relatives of Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم. And the other 5th, 1/5, another 5th goes to the orphans, a 4th 5th goes to the needy, يعني المساكين, and the last one, Ibn al-Sabil. Ibn al-Sabil is the stranded traveler, يعني a traveler who is passing by and they become stranded, then some of that money can be spent on them. So Uthman ibn Affan, he promised him the fifth that belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal and the Prophet. فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ. This khumus of Allah and the Messenger, he promised him, naflan. He said, I will give it to you. So, and Allah Azza wa Jal opened that land through their, through their hands and through the army of the Muslim. And he opened all of this land, all of those swath of lands of North Africa, the valleys, the mountains, the cities, and the villages. And most of its people entered into Islam, embraced Islam. And Abdullah ibn Sa'd, he took that fifth of the booties that he was promised, and he sent the remaining 4 parts of the fifth. Remember, we said we divided into 5 parts, and the last fifth also get further divided into 5 fifths, right? So he was promised that 1/5 of the fifth, which he took, and then he sent the remaining 4 of the 1/5 to Uthman ibn Affan because he is al Khalifa. And the 4/5 of the booties themselves, they were given to the fighters. And as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he always divided this al-aghnam and these al-anfal, these booties, he always divided it in such a way that the one who is fighting on foot, the one who is fighting on foot, he gets 1,000 part, or 1,000, alf dinar, and the knight who is fighting on a horse, they get 3,000. 1,000 for himself and 2,000 because of his horse. So this is how it was divided. 4/5 were divided in such a way to the fighters, and the last fifth, 1/5 of it, Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh, he took it, and the other 4 parts he sent it back to Uthman ibn Affan. Is it clear? Clear? طيب. So this was the battle of Afriqiya, or the conquest of Afriqiya in the year of 27 Hijri in general. Now there are some details of that. The first one is the battle of, it's called Jarjir and al-Barbar, with the Muslim in the year 27 Hijri, as the same year. This is when al-Barbar are the people of North Africa. These are the original inhabitants of North Africa, and they were aligned with the Byzantine Empire. As a matter of fact, this person, Jarjir, he is the king of the Barbar. طيب. And he used to be aligned with the king of Byzantine. And he used to give him the money, that he would collect on his behalf, etc., etc. So Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh radiyallahu an, he went to conquer those lands, as I said, and in his army were some of the great Sahaba, senior Sahaba, like Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Zubayr and many, many others. And they met the army of the Barbar and their king Jarjir, who had a holdout in a city called Subaytila. Subaytila is in Tunisia today. In this, and I'm going to show you in a quick map, inshallah, when we get to it. Just to give you an idea of what it is. The army of the Barbar was 120,000 fighters. Huge army. And even in some narrations, it is said that it reached 200,000 soldier or fighter in that army. When the Muslim army, and it was only about 10 to 20,000, the numbers were anywhere between 10,000 to 20,000 Muslim soldier. So we're talking, let's say 20,000, facing 120,000 at least. When the two sides faced one another, Jarjir, who is the king of the Barbar, he ordered his army to surround the Muslim. And they did surround them. And that completely cut them off. And subhanAllah, that resulted in a very terrible situation for the Muslim. They were so scared because obviously the enemy outnumbered them by so much. Outnumbered them by close to 6 times. And they surrounded them from all directions. So this could be a situation where they can be completely wiped out. Because there's no way to flee, right? There's no path to flee. And they were completely surrounded. So, and that situation became so tense that even Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh was so scared for the Muslim. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he came to him and he said, I can spot there, from behind the lines, I can spot their king, Jarjir. And I have a plan to defeat them without much fighting. He said, if you can order a battalion of some of the most courageous of the army to protect my back, yani have them protect my back, and I will go through the lines straight to the king. So when he spotted him, and so he agreed with him and he gave him the permission. And he spotted him, and look this, yani check this out. Subhanallah, the Muslim would always, in a fight, would always attach to Allah Azza wa Jal, would always pray to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to give them victory. And those guys would always be in a very luxurious situation. So this king, right, and he was very delusional about his large army. So he was on his horse, and there were those female servants, right, providing shade to him with the peacock feather. And he was at ease and thinking that there's no way that he can be defeated. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiyallahu anh, when he was provided this cover to protect his back, right, to cover his back, he basically went straight and breached the lines, because remember, they were surrounded. So when he spotted the king, he went straight to him, breaching the lines, and the Barbar, they thought that this was a messenger carrying a message to their king. So they were opening the lines for him. Subhanallah. Look at what Allah Azza wa Jal made them think that he is basically delivering, he's going to their king to deliver a message to him. So he breached the lines and he got quickly so close, and he drew close to the king. And when he got so close, the king realized and sensed he sensed the fear and the danger. So he immediately fled, because he was getting so close to him. So he immediately fled on his horse. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he pursued him and he stabbed him with his spear. And he killed him, and then he cut with his sword, he cut his head off, and he carried it with his spearhead. And he started a takbir, to draw the attention that I killed him and he is your king. When the Barbar saw that their king was killed, they immediately fled defeated. They dispersed and they fled defeated, and the Muslim pursued them, and they took a lot of prisoners and they killed so many of them, and they earned huge booties. They earned huge booties and a lot of money and a lot of slaves from this battle, because obviously, like I said, they completely dispersed. And subhanAllah, they outnumbered, and that they were defeated so relatively easily. So they cut all of their money and all of their properties as anfal. And like I said, this took place in a place called Subaytila, which is about 2 days journeying from Al-Qayrawan, the famous city in Tunisia. And this is what I wanted to actually show you. Subaytila in today's map Oh, did it turn on? No? Still, okay, yeah, it's still coming up. طيب. طيب. I wonder why it's not casting. Okay. Let me restart my... We'll continue inshallah when it works. I'll show it to you inshallah. طيب, continuing until we get this, see if it works. The next event, the next major event in Khilafat Uthman ibn Affan is a battle called That al-Sawari that I spoke about, that I mentioned early on. This is one of the major and decisive battles that happened during the time of Uthman. That al-Sawari, it is translated into the battles of the masts. You know the mast of the ship, right? So it is called because of the many ships and the many masts of the ships that were in that battle. As a matter of fact, this was a naval battle. It was not on ground, I'm sorry. It was in the sea. And this was against the Byzantine Empire. When the Muslimin, they defeated the Barbar and their king, Jarjir, obviously the Heraclius, the king of the Byzantine Empire, he was very angry because of that. So he wanted to take revenge, and he went through the sea to go and conquer Alexandria, which is Al-Iskandariya in Egypt today, right? So he wanted to conquer and go all the way to Alexandria. And the Byzantine Empire, here's the thing, they were controlling most of the Mediterranean Sea. As a matter of fact, they had kind of a dominance over most of the Mediterranean Sea. And they had a lot of ships, and they had compared to back in the days, they were pretty advanced, and they had production of ships, so they had hundreds and thousands of ships. And so he sent Constantine, who is, it is said that he is his son, his own son. He sent him on top of 1,000 ships, 1,000 ships to fight the Muslim. And the Muslimin also, they had ships because during the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab, when they conquered Bilad al-Sham, and the Byzantine Empire this was a piece of land that was under the Byzantine Empire. So when they conquered this land, they also took some of the ships that were stationed along that seashore, right, of Syria and Lebanon, today's world, and Palestine, etc. There were also a lot of seaports over there, and there were ships. So they took them, and then eventually they realized the importance of ships, and that this is a strategic thing you cannot do without ships. You have to be able to conquer and to counter the strategic danger and threat from the Byzantine Empire. So they also built their own naval ships and their own naval fleet. So they also had a couple of hundreds of ships that they used to fight this battle. But this was also, like I said, it was a very decisive and it was a very consequential battle, because Allah Azza wa Jal gave the victory to the Muslim, and we're going to talk about some of the details. And really this terminated and brought the Byzantine Empire dominance over the Mediterranean Sea to an end. So they lost this dominance over the Mediterranean Sea. And the Muslims showed a lot of courage, exemplary courage, as a matter of fact, in fighting, and they stood very firm while fighting this fight. What happened is he came toward Alexandria, or in the direction of Alexandria, and the Muslim, they went to face them. When they actually met, so they gave them the option: do you want to fight, or do you want to rest for that day, and then we will start fighting the following day? And eventually they decided that they were going to fight the following day. And the Byzantine army, they started to ring their bells and to beat their drums, and this is what they do. And they started to drink wine and spend the night in that, which obviously doesn't really get you victory that way, right? And the Muslimin, when they saw the large numbers of the army, of the enemy, they spent the entirety of that day and the rest of the evening in prayers and dua to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and tadarru' ila Allah Azza wa Jal, asking Him Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to give them victory over their enemy. And this is how they spent that night. And the next morning, the ships that belonged to the Byzantine army, they came close to the ships of the Muslim. And they actually they got into such a proximity that the Muslim they tied the ships together. So they tied their ships to the ships of the Byzantine army. And the fighting erupted with the swords and the spears. Obviously there were a lot of casualties, a lot of martyrs from the Muslim side, but there are also countless casualties from the side of the Byzantine army. And eventually Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala gave the victory to the Muslim and made them conquerors. So many of the Byzantine army were killed that, and even Constantine himself, he got injured so badly that he fled in his ship, and he went to there's this island in the Mediterranean Sea. We call it in Arabic Suqliya, which is Sicilia, still exists until today. That was governed by a king called Jarjiq. He was the king of that island. So he fled there to seek protection. And when he told them their story, and that he just fled this huge battle, and he told them what happened, and they were defeated, so they said, so you killed, so you basically doomed all of this number of Christians, and you caused their destruction, and they were perished, and now we can't even protect ourselves against the Muslim, because now you killed all of this, our army was destroyed. who's going to protect us from the army? So they killed him. Yani he was killed at the hand of the Christians themselves. And this is how it ended, by the Muslim conquering the Byzantine army. And it was a great, like I said, it was a great and huge victory for the Muslim. طيب. But I really wanted to kind of comment on the difference between the Muslim and, subhanAllah, the disbelievers, from the Christians, from the Jews. I mean, look how they prepare, and compare that to how the Muslim prepare for it. They spend the night, the remaining of that day and the night, in reading the Quran and praying to Allah Azza wa Jal, raising their hands, asking Allah Azza wa Jal to give them steadfastness and firmness, and to give them victory. And these guys spend the night in drinking and in ringing bells and beating drums and blowing whistles. That doesn't do much. So alhamdulillah, Allah Azza wa Jal gave them victory. Let me see if this works now. طيب. After they were victorious, Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh radiyallahu anhu ardah, being the army general, right, al-Amir, so he stayed a few days after the victory, and this is like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do. If you remember from As-Sirah, we mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to stay for a couple of days, 3 days, 4 days, in the place where they conquered the enemy. He would stay there and then he would go back. So for example, in the place of Badr, of the Battle of Badr, he stayed over there for like 3 days and then he went back to Al-Madinah, right? Likewise, Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh, he stayed there for a couple of days and then he went back victorious. Mansuran Mudaffara. Mansuran Mudaffara, he victorious. Radiyallahu anhu wa arda. Naam. 27 Hijri. After that, a lot of it basically it fell one after the other in a quick succession. There was not much resistance after that. Naam. طيب, let's see here. Yes. We're going to talk about that because we're going to be talking about the fitna that led to the killing of Uthman ibn Affan. But that was, this is the last event. We're going to be talking about it, what led to it, and how it was wrong. We're going to talk about all of that, inshallah. All from authentic sources, for sure. That's the point of this class. Oh yeah, Saba'iyya. Naam, naam. Yep. We're going to be talking about all of that, inshallah. Okay, now, so this is what I wanted to show you. Remember we said that this battle of Dhat al-Sawari, the battle of the masts, took place in a city called Subaytila, or a place called Subaytila. It still exists until today. As a matter of fact, you see on the left side, you see it says Subaytila, which is basically right here. Subaytila. I don't know if you see it in red. You see that, right? Yes. So this is Subaytila. This is where the battle took place. And if you notice, if I enlarge this map a little bit, now obviously see this is Tunisia, right? Yes. And where this red sign, right, this is where that battle took place. And Al-Qayrawan is right here. This is Al-Qayrawan. And if I make this a little bit larger, so this is where Al-Qayrawan is, right, to the right. And so let me actually, طيب. Screen right. طيب. So you see this is Al-Qayrawan, and this is Subaytila over here. This is about 2-day journeying between the two. This is in Tunisia. So this is where this battle with Al-Barbar and Jarjir took place, right? طيب. That's why I really wanted to show you. Next is the next event, the next major event that took place during the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan. And subhanAllah, the time is passing by. I think this will be the last thing that I'm going to talk about. I was hoping that we could cover more than that, but khair. Is the expansion of Al-Masjid al-Nabawi, right? The expansion, التوسعة, the expansion of Al-Masjid al-Nabawi. Now, like I said, there was a minor expansion during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then after that, there was an expansion during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. During the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, he expanded the masjid from the south and from the west and from the north. And he left the east side alone because to the left of the masjid, to the east of the masjid, I should say. To the east of the Masjid al-Nabawi, there were the houses of Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, if you remember, right? So when Rasulullah ﷺ first built the masjid, he built his houses, the houses of the different wives of Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, to the east of the masjid. So he left the east side alone. He expanded a little bit to the south, and he expanded to the west, and he expanded to the north. And then Uthman ibn Affan, when he became al-Khalifa, the people, obviously as a result of the conquest during the time of Umar, and then later on during the time of his Khilafah as well, Uthman ibn Affan, a lot of lands were opened, a lot of Muslim people embraced Islam, and the numbers of the Muslim exploded, mashallah, alhamdulillah, right? A lot of countries in their entirety embraced Islam and they became Muslim. And like I said, they needed to come and to Al-Masjid al-Haram and Al-Masjid al-Nabawi. So people started to complain to Uthman that, we're not able to fit in the masjid anymore and we have to pray outside, right? There's no room anymore for the musallin, especially on Fridays, Salat al-Jumu'ah. They can't fit in the masjid. And obviously, as well as the construction of the masjid started to need some help, if you wish. Because if you remember, Al-Masjid al-Nabawi, when it was built during the time of Rasulullah ﷺ, it was built basically, the pillars were basically from the stems of date palms. The pillars that hold the masjid, the wall, the roof, they were from the stems of the palm trees. Of the date palms. And the roof was basically from the leaves of the date palms. That's basically what it was. It was very simple, very basic, right? So those stems, obviously, over time, rain, water, and over time, they started to decay, right? And they started to wear out. So it needed some work. The expansion of Uthman ibn Affan changed some of the ways that the masjid looked. So this was the first expansion where he replaced the pillars with rock blocks. So now you have, it was a major improvement, right? A major expansion. And he again also expanded it from the south, expanded it from the west, and expanded it from the north, leaving the east side alone. And like I said, this was the first time where the pillars were made from stones and decorated stones, as a matter of fact. And he made the roof from teak wood, type of wood. He replaced the leaves from the palm trees and from the date palms. So visibly, the masjid looked different than the way it used to look during the time of Rasulullah ﷺ. And that's why some people, they kind of dislike that the masjid doesn't look anymore the way we're used to, right? It now looks different, changed. Unlike the expansion during the time of Umar, it was the same, more of the same, right? It was exactly kept the same way, but things were replaced and expanded a little bit. During the time of Uthman ibn Affan, it changed a little bit. And this is actually narrated in a hadith in Sahih al-Imam al-Bukhari that Uthman used stones to replace the pillars and wood roof. So this was one of the events during the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan. There's obviously more, but inshallah I think let's bring it to a conclusion. I wanted to, actually we could cover this very quickly. It's a relatively short or concise event. Let's talk about this inshallah. One of the achievements during the time of Uthman is the building of the naval fleet. You remember we talked about this because this was used in the Battle of the Masts, that is Sawari, as well as they inherited some of the ships from the conquest of Bilad al-Sham, Palestine and Syria during the time of Umar, right? So when they conquered these lands, they also took the ships that were left from the Byzantine army. And then they basically developed those skills of building ships on their own, and they started to build ships. So this obviously was the first Islamic naval fleet during the time of Uthman ibn Affan. And it was the first time that they conquered through the sea. Like I said, they conquered Cyprus, the island, through the sea and using the ships. So this was the first time ever. It never happened before that. So that was also from the achievements during the time of Uthman ibn Affan. The next event would have been the Jama' of Al-Quran in Al-Mus'haf Al-Uthmani. This will take some time. I guess let's stop here inshallah, take a break, and then the second class would start afterward. Inshallah, those who are following online, stay with us inshallah. We'll be back in about 20 minutes. Any questions or any comments? No? طيب. أسأل الله لي ولكم العلم النافع والعمل الصالح والإخلاص في القول والعمل. هذا والله أعلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.